Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Haba. We're beginning Halachos Tzitzis. I want to begin by speaking a little bit about the history of Tzitzis. If you were to imagine in your mind for a moment, when do you think the mitzvah of Tzitzis began? Like, when was the first time Jews wore Tzitzis? We know Avram Avinu was Mekayim Kol HaTorah Kula before it was given. So did Avram Avinu have a Tzitzis? Did he have tchelas? Who were the first Jews to put on tzitzis? When was it nitztaveh? So in next week's parsha, and the same thing about tefillin. Tefillin, were they commanded in this week's parsha? Tefillin, this week we have two parshas of the tefillin. But how do you say they wore tefillin? I mean, tefillin has four parshas. Shema is in Va'aschanan, in Mishnah Torah. It seemingly wasn't given yet. V'hayim Shamaya is in Parshas Eikev. It's also in Devarim. It wasn't given yet. So to say that they started to wear tzitzis and tefillin already, what, in Mitzrayim they wore tzitzis? Did they have tefillin in Mitzrayim? How could they have tefillin in Mitzrayim if they didn't have yet the Parsha of Shema and V'hayim Shamaya? So just by way of introduction, the Kli Chemda in Devarim says that you can't say they started performing mitzvahs before. For example, he says the mitzvah of tefillin. The mitzvah of tefillin, they wore tefillin right away after this week, when Hashem gave them Kadesh Li Kol B'char and the parsha of V'haya Kiviyacha. They don't have yet the parsha of Shema and the parsha of V'hayim Shamaya. Next week, we say V'hamayim lohem chaymaha miminam u'mismailam. The waters was a wall to them from their right side and from their left side. So what exactly does that mean? The waters was a wall to them from the right and the left. So the Dasikenim Mibali HaTosfos quotes a medrash that when Klal Yisrael were passing through the Yam, Gavriel came and he stirred up a certain Midas Hadin on Klal Yisrael, and the water said, after Klal Yisrael incited a chema, right? It says v'hamayim lahem chayma, al tikri chayma ela chema. Gavriel came and he called out. He said to the waters on the right side, "Be careful with the Jewish people. They're destined to accept the Torah that's given. Mimino shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu." Yeah, and then he goes to the waters on the left side and he says, "Watch out for Klal Yisrael. They're destined to put on tefillin on their left side." Now, wait a second. That clearly indicates that they did not yet start wearing tefillin in Mitzrayim, because if they were wearing tefillin in Mitzrayim, what's Gabriel saying? They're destined to wear tefillin. Then he says to the water behind them, "Be careful in Klal Yisrael. They're destined to be mesatif b'tzitzis me'achireihem." I mean, destined. They didn't wear tzitzis when they left Mitzrayim. I mean, they had a shtreimel when they left Mitzrayim, so of course they wore tzitzis. No. They had a shtreimel, but they didn't yet have tzitzis, the Dasikenim says. And then the Dasikenim brings down that the water listened and they stood like a chayma. By the way, he says from this medrash we see that what does it mean Klal Yisrael is destined to misatif b'tzitzis me'achireihem? That's referring to the time of the atifa, that at that moment all four tzitzis are behind them. We always like to say, I never like to lose the opportunity just to point out, most people have no idea how to put on a talis. They do a token gesture to the ancient Hebrews that wore talisim, but to actually put it on correctly, this is for Ashkenaz now, excuse my back, but okay, is you're supposed to put it in the front ad piv. Okay? I go like this, just to make sure it's ad piv. It's supposed to cover your eyes until your mouth. Then, when you wrap in the back, excuse my back, when you go like, when you put it over your back, your shoulders and part of your back has to be covered. Otherwise, you're not fulfilling atifa, because the ikar atifa is atifas haguf, not atifas harosh. If you look around, this is what many people do. They cover, and they make like a scarf, yeah? No, it can't go up to your neck. You have to have your shoulders and part of your back covered. Okay, that's, just in case you forgot from last time. So this Tzitzis implies that when the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim, they did not wear tzitzis and they did not wear a talis. Now, legabe tzitzis, it seems pretty clear they weren't even commanded on tzitzis yet. Anybody remember when were Klal Yisrael commanded on the mitzvah of tzitzis? Where do we have the mitzvah of tzitzis? In Parshas Shlach. In the aftermath of the Mekoshesh, you have a guy, he's collecting wood on Shabbos, he's violating bundling or gathering, and the Medrash says, Lama nismacha Parshas Mekoshesh leParshas Tzitzis, because when the Mekoshesh was Mechalo Shabbos, so Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam, it says in the Tefillin, Laman tiyeh taras Hashem b'ficha. But the problem is, you're not allowed to carry Tefillin on Shabbos. If they would have had a mitzvah to remind them, they wouldn't have been Mechalo Shabbos. So Hashem says, okay, give them the mitzvah of Tzitzis. So that indicates that the mitzvah of Tzitzis was commanded in the Midbar in response to the Cheder of the Mekoshesh. What about the mitzvah of Tefillin? Because we just brought from the Das Ken Bali HaTosfos that seemingly they did not have Tefillin yet when they left Mitzrayim. And one strong indication would seem to be the fact that how could they have a Tefillin? We have the two parashas of Kadesh and V'hoya Kiviyachar are commanded in this week's parsha, but Shema and V'hoyam Shemaya are not commanded until Parshas V'aschanan. There's a very interesting Rashba in Menachos. The Gemara Menachos makes a limud from the parsha of Shema to the parsha of Kadesh and V'hoya Kiviyachar. So the Rashba asks, what do you mean? How could that limud have? We basically, the Gemara says, we learn out Pesach Mitzrayim from a pasuk in Shema. So the Rashba asks, what do you mean we learn out Pesach Mitzrayim from a pasuk in Shema? Shema wasn't given yet. Pesach Mitzrayim was in Egypt. Parsha of Shema wasn't given until Mishnah Torah. So the Rashba says, Ein mukdam u'muchar b'Torah. And even though it wasn't written yet, it was given to Klal Yisrael. So according to that, it could be they did wear tefillin, even in Mitzrayim. Shema wasn't given till later. Who told you that? Because Shema wasn't written till later? So, ein mukdam u'muchar b'Torah, so even though it wasn't said, it was nitna. Or the Rashba says, Shema v'hoyim Shemaya were said at the time of Pesach Mitzrayim. They just weren't written down yet. So, according to that, it could be that they had all four parshas. In fact, it was just the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin. Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin has a famous drush on the Hoishanos, where we say, listen carefully, Ki hoishata, like you saved, Tevuim, those who drowned, or Bitsul Gezarim, in the swamp of reeds, Yikarcha imam ma'avirim. Yikarcha, what's Yikar? La Yehudim hoisa oira, oira is Torah. Oira, V'simcha is what? Yamtif. V'sasain is Mila. Vikar is Tefillin. So when it says Kahishata Tevuim B'tzol Gazar Hashem, when you save those who are going to drown in the Yamsuf, Yikarcha ima ma'avirim. They brought with them their Yikar, their Tefillin. Says Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin, Umasai Hischila Mitzvahs Tefillin. Amar Hagan Rabbi Shua Leib Diskin, Shetekaf Achar Shegamru Lechal Es Pescheim in this week's parsha. V'nishal Lahem Zman Rav Ad Shas Yitziasan. There was a lot of time between the Hakrah of the Karm Pesach and the leaving of Mitzrayim. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to them the parsha of Kadesh Li and V'hoya Kiviyacha. He told them about the mitzvah of Tefillin. V'hoyu La'os Al Yadcha. They went, they made Tefillin from the hides of the Karban Pesach and the Gidim, and from then on, Klal Yisrael wore Tefillin. Again, you'll have to come on to the Rashba that even though Shema and V'hoyim Shema were not written until later, it was given already in Mitzrayim. Okay, that's just by way of introduction. We're about to start Halachos Tzitzis in the Shoneh Halachos. Siman Ches, Halachos Tzitzis v'atifasai. Miyad achar netilas yadayim, yisatif b'tzitzis, kadosh shelo yelech da'ad amos b'lei tzitzis. Right after you wash negel vaser, you should put on tzitzis. Best to avoid walking 4 amos without tzitzis. Which means, let's say you wash negel vaser right away, or if you don't have it by the bed, you go to the bathroom, you wash negel vaser. you should try to put on tzitzis right away. Don't be like walking around in your team's t-shirt. Just because it's they're in the playoffs, you should still cover your pajamas with your tzitzis as soon as possible. Is there an inyan to sleep with it? So al pi the Arizal, there's an inyan to sleep in the tzitzis. According to baseline halacha, no, because then you can't make a bracha in the morning. The
bracha on the talis, and then you have in mind the tzitzis.
Right. But in general, al pi halacha not. We're going to see. When are you chayiv in tzitzis? Are you only chayiv in the day, or are you only chayiv in a day garment? But to sleep in it, it's not the day, it's the night, and then you're going to sleep in it. It's a day garment. It becomes a night garment, and it's not even chayiv in tzitzis. Okay, base. Ho'atifa v'habracha shteyem yu ba'amida. Wrapping yourself, making a bracha on the tzitzis should both be standing. V'diavad yatsa b'shteyem afilu lo yamad. B'diavad you yatzei both if you were sitting. In other words, b'diavad, let's say you have a hospital, someone's chas v'shalom is bedridden. They can't stand up. They still put on the tzitzis, and they still do an atifa b'diavad sitting. V'chein kol berchas hamitzvos sarach lios ba'amida l'chadchila. All berchos hamitzvos are supposed to be standing. So you'll say Sfardim sit when they put on tefillin. That's what.
You should stand.
Asher Yotzer is not a berchas hamitzvah.
I'm saying, but I heard you're supposed to stand.
That's a different reason. That might be a berchas hashavach. Now we're learning berchas hamitzvah. You should you should say standing. Okay. Now, when exactly should you make the bracha on the talis? Yevarech lechatchila b'shah shu oiches hatalis biyadai. Lechatchila, you should make a bracha when you're holding the talis. V'roitzel esatev ba, and you're about to wrap yourself in it. V'loi b'shas she'adayim mekufeles, not while it's still folded. So you don't make the bracha while it's still in the bag. The best is kol mitzvos mavarchen olav oivel asiyasan. Yeah. So as you're about to do the atifa, when you're holding it, you make the bracha and then you wrap. Okay. Sif katan hey. Oh no, sif katan dalad. This is very important. What's the halacha if a person puts on tzitzis and they don't think I'm having kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis? What happens is hopefully they'll be mekayim a different mitzvah that day, like tefillin, but tzitzis will not be a mitzvah that they're mekayim that day. We paskin mitzvahs tzrichos kavanah. That means you need to have a formal, actualized thought. I have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. Some people say l'shem yichad. That's not required. According to some, it's not allowed. But what is required is that you have to formally think you're mechavein to mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. V'chavein b'hisatfai shetzivanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'hisatef bai. Now, there's a Bach. The Bach says one should also think when he puts on tefillin, on tzitzis, that they're putting on tzitzis in order to remember all the mitzvahs. So you say, why do I have to think the reason for the mitzvah? The reason is, says the Bach, there are 3 mitzvahs in the Torah where the Torah says the following word, Leman. You're doing the mitzvah because. So the Torah is saying, you're doing this mitzvah because. What are the 3 mitzvahs? Tzitzis, tefillin, sukkah. So by tzitzis, the Bach says you need to think, I'm putting on tzitzis to remember the 613 mitzvahs. When you put on tefillin, you should think, I'm putting on tefillin so that the Torah of Hashem should be in my mouth, that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. And when you sit in the sukkah, you should think, I'm sitting in the sukkah in order that Leman Yedu Doiroi Seichem. Whenever the Torah says Leman, and the Torah is giving an explicit reason for the mitzvah, you should have that in mind. So really, one thought is Ma'akev. If you don't think it, you're not Yoitzei. And one thought is L'chatchila. What is Ma'akev? That you're being mechavein to mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. And l'chatchila, you should think you're doing it kedei shenisgar kol mitzvaysav, in order to remember all the mitzvahs la'asoisam. V'gam yichavein l'kayim mitzvah tzitzis. U'v'di'eved im loy kiven rak l'kayim ha-mitzvah yatsa b'di'eved. If all you thought was that you want to be mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis, you're yotzei. So the most important kavanah is, I have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. Added to that, I'm doing it to remember all 613 mitzvahs. Now, question. How does Tzitzis remind us of all 613 mitzvahs?
Tzitzis is Gematria 600.
Tzitzis is Gematria 600. Sadi, Yud, Sadi, Taf. 590 is Gematria 600. And then you have the 8 strings, and you have the 5 knots. So Tzitzis is Gematria 590, but we'll say it's 600. And 8 strings is 8, because the Gematria of 8 is 8. And the 5 knots, 5 is Gematria 5. That's 613. But the big question Tosfos asks is, the word Tzitzis is spelled Tzadi, Yud, Tzadi, Taf. So how's the Gematria 600? So Tosfos says it's written Tzadi Yud Tzadi Taf. It's pronounced Tzadi Yud Taf. What's the difference between whether there's a Yud or not? There's a difference. Okay, this is a very important halacha. There's something called a Chirik Maleh. You know what a Chirik Maleh is? Okay. What are they learning now in? No. What's the Masechta after Gittin? Kedushin, right? If you pronounce the word Kedushin, you're pronouncing it incorrectly. The word is Kiddushin. Ian. Why? Why do I say that? Because there's a Yud, right? Kuf, Dalid, Vav, Shin, Yud, final Nun. So you can't say Kiddushin. It's not a shva, not an I sound, it's an E sound. Why? Because there's a Yud. For example, what do you say to God at the end of Shemona Esrei when you bow? No, what do you say? What word? Moedim. Moedim, right? No, you can't say Moedim. 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 What's the difference? There's no difference. Just one is correct and one is incorrect. Let's say you go into your house and you put in the wrong code. What's the difference between the wrong code and the right code? The difference is one is correct and one is not correct. One gets you into the house, one doesn't get into the house. So let's say you have a mitzvah of Shemona Esrei. You want to know, did I do the mitzvah? Yes, if you said the words, you did the mitzvah. If you say moedim, you didn't say the word. If you say moedim, you did say the word. And don't say who's makbid on it. Rav Moshe was makbid gomor to say moedim. There's a difference between a chirik maleh. Now, this makes a big nafkamina by the word tzitzis. If we see it's written tzitzis, but according to Tosfos, it's a kri ksiv. It's written tzitzis, but it's pronounced tzitzis. But we don't go like that. Tosfos. Tosfos gives another answer. Tosfos says 4 times it says tzitzis. One of the times it says v'haya lachem letzitzis. The lamed is dispersed among all the tzitzis, so it gets 10. Lamed is 30. So it says tzitzis 3 times. So that 30 is divided by the 3 tzitzises, and each one gets 10. That's how tzitzis is gematria 600. Okay, but that's important to know about chirik maleh. What are some examples of that? The whole Siddur is an example of that. Dilal malshi, you'll hear everyone say Vilal malshinim. Yeah? There's no such word. It's Vilal malshinim. Why? There's a yud there. What are you going to do? Yeah, but nobody says that. I can't help you that nobody pronounces the yud. The yud would like you to recognize him. I mean, it's insulting. Imagine like there are people in the shul and you shake everyone's hand except for one guy because you don't see them. He's not going to feel very good if you completely ignore him. Also the yud doesn't have a question. Ki. Yeah, you say ki. Why? Because there's a yud after the chirik. Nobody says ki. So you're not prejudiced against that yud. Ashira Lashem. What's the next word? Ki. No, why? You should say ki. Because you say kedushin or v'lamashit. The answer is you're being biased. You're randomly prejudiced against certain yuds. You just have to be aware that all yuds are created equal. All yuds deserve equality and fair treatment. Okay? So, here's an example. Moedim anafnulach
V'lam al shini v'sechazena inenu b'shuvcha l'tzion b'racha miyim. And there are many other. Here's another. Shema Kreilenu, Hashem Alekeinu, Chus V'rachim Aleinu, V'kabel B'rachamim. First of all, it's not. There's no word B'rachamim. It's a milra. B'rachamim, B'rachamim. Okay, so that's a chirik mali. Anyway, what does it have to do? It's the word tzitzis. Tzitzis. V'hayalachem letzitzis. Let's see. Tzitzis. Tzitzis. Okay? So what's the difference? One is you're saying Kriya Shema, and one is you're saying a token gesture to the ancient practice of the Hebrews who would say Kriya Shema. It's Tzitzis, not Tzitzis. Tzitzis. Okay. Weiter. Now, Tzorach Lahafred Chutei Hatz. Now, when we're learning it in the Shoneh Halachos, I should be makbid to say it. Okay, fine. Okay. Tzorach Lahafred Chutei Hatzitzis. See there, he puts two chiraks there, but that's not how it is in Sefer Tanra. You have to now when you take out your talis in the morning, you need to separate the strings of the tzitzis, shelo yim mesuvachim, so they're not entangled. Echa b'chaveroi. The Kasav Arizal, tzitzis rashi tevos tzadik yafrid tzitziyosav tamid. A tzadik separates his tzitzis always. The word tzitzis is, in other words, you don't want to have the tzitzis intertangled and samished and farmished and all other things, that denote. You want them to be distinctive. Okay. And that's what a tzaddik. Now, by the way, that's not the only thing a tzaddik does. The tzaddik is not a good guy and he's always separating his tzitzis. That doesn't make him a tzaddik. It means, among other things. Now, what if you're coming late to shul? And by untangling your tzitzis, you're going to be even later. If you're delayed coming to shul, and you're going to miss minyan, you don't have to untangle your tzitzis. Now, by the way, what does it mean to miss minyan? Very simple. The definition of davening with the minyan is starting Shemona Esrei with the tzibor. It has nothing to do with being in the building that a minyan is davening at. The definition of davening with the minyan is starting with the tzibor, Shemona Esrei. If by separating your tzitzis, you're going to not be able to start Shemona Esrei with the tzibor, you don't have to do it. V'tzarchian, it's not clear. You definitely l'chadchila have to separate them. Ki efshir d'litzaz deos, it is possible that according to some opinions, ein levarich aleim ba'odim mesuvakim, you should not make a bracha on them while they're still entangled. Look in the Bir Halacha, and like Reb Chaim sometimes does, he quotes the Chazon Ish kasav she'ein ma'akev. Chazon Ish says tangled tzitzis are not ma'akev v'yachal levarich. You can make a bracha on them, eino ela noi hatzitzis. It's only beautiful for the tzitzis to be untangled, but it's not ma'akev. However, the Bir Halacha does have a deya that tangled tzitzis is an issue. You should l'chadchila try to untangle them, but if you're running late to minyan, you don't have to. Katan zayin. Koidem she'yivarech ya'ayin v'chutei hatzitzis in them ksherim. Before you make a bracha, you want to glance at the strings to make sure they're kosher. Now, b'didi have a uvda more than once. You also want to check the hole. You want to check the hole where the tzitzis come out of. Why is that? Very simply. Especially the talis katan, but even talis gadol, a few things. So you want to check the strings that they're not torn. You want to make sure the hole is not frayed. Because sometimes, because of the pressure of the tzitzis, the hole opens up a little bit, tears slightly. So you say, big deal if it tears slightly. Big deal is if it tears slightly, now the loop is going to be too close to the edge of the baguette, and the tzitzis could be puzzle. So basically, each morning, you want to glance at the holes. You glance at the strings, and you glance at the holes to make sure. Now, our tzitzis usually have the hole is reinforced with stitching. But even so, it's happened to me more than once, not in my talis gadol, but in my talis katan, that, it's, the hole is a little frayed, and they could be puzzle. So you want to take a look at it before you make a bracha. Okay? V'gam yivzekei lamalu v'akoneka, you want to check the hole. Shaloi Hesham Nifsak, that it should not be slit. What about on Shabbos? Should you check it on Shabbos? Nothing you could do about it on Shabbos, but you should check it on Shabbos. Gam b'Shabbos yesh livdak. Uvefradim hoylech by achar kach, especially if you're going to be walking in them afterwards outside. Because if your tzitzis are puzzle, then it's carrying. Ba'afilu lekarmelis. Even if you're only going to a karmelis, we're carrying his midrabanan, you should still check the tzitzis. V'yoser tov sheyidik be'erev Shabbos b'shas hanachasa b'kisai. Best practice is check your talis Friday when you put it away. This way, if there are any issues, you could actually fix it. Better to do that than to have to rely on checking it on Shabbos. The thing is, that doesn't really work if you have a separate talis for Shabbos. Now, what if you're like a Reb Scheinberg? You raise your hand if you wear 100 pairs of tzitzis. Now's the time to come out of the closet, you know? It's okay. Nobody knows. I won't post it. But let's say you wear more than one garment of tzitzis. How many brachas do you make? Actually, I'm going to, they have this game. My son is involved in this game. It's called, I'm going to make my friend a good commercial, Holy Doubles. Holy Doubles is basically a card game for kids of matching Gedolim. You know, when I was a kid, what did we match? I don't know. Who are the characters on the match? I don't remember. Different farshidin, individuals. But nowadays, Achshar Dara, they have card games where they match Gedolim. Yeah? So now they're making, so my son was like a graphic designer of the second Holy Doubles 2. Now they're making a game called Guess Who with Gedolim. Does your Gadol have a white beard, a black beard? Anyway, one of the pictures is Reb Scheinberg lighting the menorah, wearing, mambish 100 garments. You see a small man, he's frail, but he has 100 garments and he's lighting the menorah. It's like Ayah menorah. Anyway, so how many brachas do you make? So Mishalevish Kamu Gal Shatziz Bracha Achas, Yivdoik Kulam. You got to check all of them. Okay? Befute Ha'anaf, you want to look at the strings, but you don't have to check the holes. Avalamala, why? Avalamala b'makam hanekev. But to check the holes, checking the holes, you only have to check one of them. So it's very interesting, by the way, because why are you checking them? Are you checking them because if they're puzzle, you're wearing a beged of dalet kanfos without tzitzis? Or are you checking them for the bracha? That if they're puzzle, you're making a bracha levatala. So it seems like legabi, the strings, you're checking them, maybe they're puzzle. And then you're going to be wearing a beged of dalet kanfos without tzitzis. So for the strings, you got to check all the begadim. But legabe, the hole is only so that it's not a bracha levatala. Because for bracha levatala, we have a higher standard. But if anyway you're wearing 100 garments, you don't really have to worry about a bracha levatala. One of them is going to be good. Okay, let's do one more. You should check them every day in the morning. When you put it on. Let's say you took over your talis the whole day. They used to wear the talis the whole day. And you got distracted. Even though it needs a bracha, you don't have to check again. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm doing two more because I want to do the halacha about talis katan. Do you need to check your talis katan? Married men do not make a bracha on a talis katan. Yeah, correct. Do you know about that? When you tied the knot, when you said to your wife, "Hareya mikudesh asli," it relieved you of a major responsibility. Did you know this? No. Yeah. Now, even though you have many responsibilities now you can't leave your socks, just throw them on the floor somewhere. She's not going to be happy. Let's say when you brush your teeth, you have to tighten the cap. You can't leave a toothpaste untightened. But the good news is that you save yourself a good few seconds every day. You don't make a bracha on a talis katan. Good to know. What do? When you put on your talis gadol, you have in mind to exempt the talis katan. So now the question is, do I have to check a talis katan? I'm not making a bracha on it. If the reason I'm checking a talis is to ensure the bracha is a good bracha, well, I'm not making a bracha on a talis katan. So look at this. Im badakat. Now, if I check my talis now when I put it away, I don't have to check it in the morning. It's staying in the bag. Nobody's fooling around with my talis while I'm gone. Talis katan, Im ein mavarich alav. I'm sorry. Sivkad Yud Aleph. Im badak hatas v'shes me alav. If you check your talis and you take it off, v'yinicha b'kisi you put in the bag. Ein sarf lafsav v'levadkai machar k'shei satif. You don't have to check it in the morning. Sivkatan Yud.
For Shabbos.
What?
You have a talis for Shabbos, so you check it Matzah Shabbos, so it's good for the night.
Oh yeah, correct. Yeah, you're right. Good point. In other words, as he's pointing out, if you have your Shabbos talis and you check it Matzah Shabbos when you put it in the bag, you won't have. That's a good eitzah. You don't have to check it when you put it on Shabbos. But one last halacha, talis katan in ein mavarich alav. If you don't make a bracha, efshir the ein sarch livdaik rak hachutin, because the strings are to make sure it's not a beged of dalit kanfos without tzitzis. The only reason you check the hole is to make sure it's not a bracha levatala. But there's no issue of bracha levatala on talis katan because you're not making a bracha on the talis katan. But it's not common to be puzzled by the nekev. My experience is that if you wear your tzitzis out, it puts a lot of pressure on the hole. So then you might want to check it. If it's not out, then I don't think the chash is the same level that it might tear over there. Okay, so the bottom line is that the chiyuv of checking a talis katan is primarily on the string and not the hole. Talis gadol, you should check the string and the hole. It is correct occasionally to look on the talis katan, even on the holes, especially someone who sleeps in it. Now, one thing I will point out is, let's see, remember when you were 3 years old and they gave you a talis katan in yeshiva? You should not still be wearing that talis katan. You need to wear a talis katan that fits you. Many people, they open up their shirt and you see the talis katan goes up to here. Seriously, it's not a joke. They couldn't find the talis katan, and there's a choo-choo train on it with you need to have a talis katan that actually fits you. Okay? Now, the b'diavad shear is something that a 9-year-old, it could cover the majority of the guf of a 9-year-old. It should be at least 18 inches. Yeah? Have a good day, everyone.